65 people are dead in Iran as the regime declares all protesters enemies of God. The internet has been completely shut down for 72 hours. Over 2,300 people are detained, and the world is watching what could be the most significant geopolitical event of 2026. This is not hyperbole. This is happening right now, and it could reshape the entire Middle East. Let's break down everything you need to know. As of January 14, 2026, protests in Iran have raged for nearly 2 weeks. What started as economic demonstrations has exploded into the largest anti-government movement since the Masa Amini protests of 2022. But this time, something is different. This time, the regime is responding with unprecedented brutality and desperation. According to the human rights activists' news agency, the death toll has climbed to at least 65, possibly as high as 72 people. Over 2,300 protesters are now detained across the country. And here's what changed in the last 24 hours that makes this absolutely critical. Iran's Attorney General Mohammad Movaheedi-Azad went on state television and declared that anyone participating in protests is now an enemy of God. Let me be crystal clear about what that means under Iranian law. That is a death penalty charge. The official statement said, and I quote, "Proceedings must be conducted without leniency, compassion, or indulgence." The Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, is now on yellow alert. That's one step below a full military crackdown. Troops are being positioned in major cities. Armored vehicles have been spotted in Tehran, Shiraz, and Isfahan. But here's what makes this completely different from the 2022 protests. The internet is gone. On Thursday, January 9th, Iran implemented a complete nationwide internet blackout. Phone lines to the outside world cut. VPN connections blocked. International calling disabled. According to NetBlocks, a cybersecurity organization that monitors internet freedom, the blackout has now lasted over 72 hours and remains firmly in place. And here's where it gets wild. According to residents interviewed by CNN, the internet shutdown appears to have backfired. Quote, "Boredom and frustration drove even more people into the streets. Without internet, without social media, without any connection to the outside world, people had nothing to do except join the protests." State television is playing military music and claiming peace has been restored in most cities. But videos verified by the Associated Press show thousands of people in the streets of northern Tehran, specifically the Sadat Abad neighborhood, directly contradicting that narrative. So what's actually driving these protests? Let's talk about the economics, because this is crucial to understanding why this is happening now. The Iranian Rial has collapsed to 145,000 per US dollar. To put that in perspective, in 2015 it was 32,000 per dollar. The currency has lost 78% of its value in just one decade. Inflation is running at 42% annually. Food prices have doubled in the past year. Rent in Tehran has tripled since 2020. The government just proposed a budget that increased security spending by 150% while offering wage increases of only about 40%. That doesn't even match half the inflation rate. Workers are getting poorer while the regime spends billions on internal security, and that's not even counting the money Iran has lost supporting proxies across the region. Protesters are chanting, "Death to Khamenei." That's the supreme leader. They're waving the pre-1979 lion and sun flag, the monarchist symbol. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, who has been in exile for nearly 50 years since the Islamic Revolution, is calling on protesters to seize and hold city centers. X, formerly Twitter, even changed the Iran flag emoji to the monarchist lion and sun design in solidarity with protesters. Now here's where international politics comes in, and this is where it gets extremely dangerous. President Trump warned on January 3rd, just 11 days ago, that if Iran violently kills peaceful protesters, the United States would come to their rescue. His exact words on Truth Social were, "America is locked and loaded and ready to go." Secretary of State Marco Rubio posted on Saturday, "The United States supports the brave people of Iran and their fight for freedom." The Iranian army responded by saying it will safeguard national interests and accused Israel and hostile terrorist groups of seeking to undermine public security. This is classic regime playbook. Blame outside forces, claim foreign interference, rally nationalism. But here's the context that makes this moment so precarious. This is happening just 7 months after the United States and Israel bombed Iranian nuclear facilities in a coordinated strike. Assad has fallen in Syria, Iran's key Arab ally. Hezbollah has been severely weakened after Israel's campaign in Lebanon. Iran's network of regional proxies, the so-called axis of resistance, is shattered. Iran is more isolated than it has been in decades. If you want to know why this matters to you, why this matters to global markets, why this matters beyond just Middle Eastern politics, here's the answer. Iran produces 3 million barrels of oil per day. That's about 3% of global oil supply. If this regime falls, or if there's any U.S. or Israeli military intervention, that supply could disappear overnight, and the market is already responding. Brent crude jumped 2.2% on Friday to $63.30 per barrel, the biggest single-day gain since October. West Texas Intermediate hit $59.40. But here's the real risk. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, is the most important oil choke point in the world. 21 million barrels per day pass through it. That's 21% of global petroleum supply. If Iran decides to close that strait, or if military conflict breaks out, oil could spike to $100 per barrel or higher within days. Gas prices in the United States would surge, inflation would accelerate, and the global economy would face a severe shock. So let's talk about what could actually happen here, because there are 3 realistic scenarios, and all of them have massive implications. Scenario 1, the regime crushes the protests with overwhelming force. This is what happened in 2022, in 2019, in 2009 after the Green Movement. The Revolutionary Guard moves in, mass arrests, executions, brutal crackdown. The protests are suppressed, but the underlying economic and political problems remain. This scenario means continued instability, continued sanctions, and Iran remains a pariah state. Oil prices stabilize but remain elevated due to supply risk. Scenario 2. The protests escalate and the United States or Israel intervenes militarily. Trump has already signaled willingness. Marco Rubio is one of the most hawkish foreign policy voices in Washington. If the death toll spikes to hundreds or thousands, if the regime starts mass executions, the pressure for U.S. action becomes enormous. This scenario means war. It means oil at $100 or more. It means a potential Iranian retaliation against U.S. bases in Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf. It means attacks on oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. This is the most dangerous scenario for global markets. Scenario 3, the regime falls from within. The military refuses orders. Key figures defect. The government collapses like it did in Syria with Assad. This is what Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi is hoping for. This scenario creates a power vacuum. Who fills it? The monarchists? A democratic movement? Another authoritarian faction? Chaos? Nobody knows. And during that transition period, oil exports from Iran would likely halt completely. Markets hate uncertainty, and this would create maximum uncertainty. Now let's connect this to everything else happening in the world right now, because nothing happens in isolation. While Iran burns, President Trump just threatened to take Greenland from Denmark, a NATO ally, by force if necessary. Denmark is now spending $13.8 billion to defend Greenland, not from Russia, not from China, from the United States. NATO, the alliance that has kept peace in Europe for 75 years, is fracturing from within. Meanwhile, Russia just fired its Orishnik hypersonic missile at Ukraine, landing just 45 miles from the Polish border. That's a nuclear-capable weapon that Putin claims is impossible to intercept. And while all of this geopolitical chaos unfolds, the United States is trying to convince oil companies to invest $100 billion in rebuilding Venezuela's oil industry. Why? Because if Iran's oil disappears, if Russia's oil remains sanctioned, America needs alternative supply sources. But ExxonMobil's CEO looked Trump in the eye last Friday and said, quote, "Venezuela is uninvestable." Do you see how everything is connected? Iran is burning, NATO is fracturing, Russia is testing Europe's limits, and the United States is scrambling to secure energy alternatives. This is not normal geopolitics. This is a fundamental reshaping of the global order happening in real time. So what does this mean for you? What does this mean for markets? What does this mean for your money? Let's get practical. Gold is responding to all of this chaos. Gold hit $4,300 per ounce last week. Silver reclaimed $80. When governments destabilize, when alliances fracture, when wars threaten, precious metals win. Morgan Stanley is forecasting gold could reach $4,800 by Q4 2026. Bank of America and JP Morgan have $5,000 targets. If Iran falls, if this situation escalates, those targets could be hit by summer. Oil is the obvious trade here. If you believe Iran destabilizes further, energy stocks and oil ETFs are the play. But remember, oil is also a double-edged sword. Higher oil prices mean higher inflation, which means the Federal Reserve might not cut rates as much as markets expect. That's bearish for stocks. Defense stocks are another angle. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, RTX all surged this week after Trump proposed boosting military spending to $1.5 trillion. If the U.S. intervenes in Iran, if tensions with Russia escalate further, defense contractors will print money. But here's my warning. The stock market is at all-time highs while the world is on fire. The S&P 500 is trading at a forward PE above 23. That's historically very expensive. When valuations are this stretched and geopolitical risks are this high, the downside risk is real. Diversification matters more than ever. You need exposure to cash, to commodities, to equities, to real assets. Spread your bets. Nobody knows how this ends. Let me give you the watch list for the next 72 hours because this situation is moving fast. First, watch the death toll in Iran. If it spikes above 100, if the regime starts mass executions, international pressure for intervention becomes overwhelming. Second, watch oil prices. If Brent crude breaks above $70, the market is pricing in serious supply disruption. Third, watch Trump's statements. If he moves from rhetoric to action, if U.S. military assets start positioning in the region, that's the signal. Fourth, watch what Russia does. If Russia sees the U.S. distracted by Iran, does Putin escalate in Ukraine? Does he test NATO further? And fifth, watch the protesters themselves. Are they holding ground? Are they seizing government buildings? Is the movement growing or being suppressed? Social media is dark inside Iran, but videos are still getting out through satellite connections and neighboring countries. Pay attention to what you see. Here's my final thought. We are living through a hinge moment in history. The post-World War II order, the American-led international system, NATO, the petrodollar, all of it is being stress-tested simultaneously. Iran is just one piece of a much larger puzzle, but it's a critical piece. 3 million barrels per day, the Strait of Hormuz, nuclear ambitions, regional proxies. If Iran falls, the entire Middle East gets redrawn. If Iran survives through brutal repression, the instability continues. Either way, the world is changing. Stay informed, stay diversified, stay attentive. I'll be updating this story as it develops. If this video helped you understand what's happening and why it matters, hit that like button and subscribe. There's never been a more important time to stay informed about geopolitics and markets. I'll see you in the next one.